Hello, Knights Watchmen, and welcome to the very first episode of what I hope to be a regular video series on Games of Thrones. As you've seen probably on the blog, we have been reviewing and talking about a number of different Game of Thrones related games. The one that I'm most interested in, this is me, hi, is the Fantasy Flight Games living card game for Game of Thrones. It's a bit of a steep learning curve, but I think seeing it in action is better than, having me write thousands of words about it on the internet. So how about I do just a short breakdown of how the game works, and then Clay and I will play a game. It'll be my House Stark deck versus his House Greyjoy deck, and we'll see just how badly I can crush him like bug.
My House Greyjoy deck is largely untested, and I don't play Greyjoy that much, so it should be good. Mind me eating while we're trying to record.
Oh yeah, just so that everybody on the internet is aware, we are in Canada. We drink Tim Hortons coffee. Tim Hortons, if you want to sponsor this, that would be great.
Fantastic.
So, in Game of Thrones, the living card game, there are 6 types of cards. This isn't, a 52-card pickup kind of game. This is more like Magic the Gathering, Yu-Gi-Oh!, those types of games. In Game of Thrones, the 6 main card types are, and I'm just going to pull them out, and then I'll show them to you one at a time.
I just realized I shouldn't be shot.
That's 5, and you've got the 6th one in your deck.
You don't have an agenda?
Not in this deck, no. This runs a care agenda. Okay, so this is a plot card. The plot cards are defined by 4 different pieces of information. Let's just make sure that this is framed up properly. Alright. So in the top right corner, geez, not really in focus, eh? Alright, well that's okay, I can fix that in post. In the top of the card, there is a gold circle with a number. In this case, it's the number 4. Let's see if I can fix this, eh? Hey, look, you can see the numbers now, ish. Okay, the gold circle with the number 4 is the amount of gold that this plot will provide you with at the start of the marshalling phase. The bronze diamond with the number 3 in it, that is the initiative value that the plot represents. The initiative will determine who goes first in a given round. The silver circle is the claim value on your plot. When you initialize challenges during the challenges phase, the claim value represents the amount of reward you'll get for winning a given challenge. Also important is the text box underneath. In this case, it states House Stark only. Means if Clay wanted to run it in his Greyjoy deck, he wouldn't be able to because he's a filthy islander. Also, during initiative challenges against you, your characters with a military icon gain an intrigue icon. The text on the card doesn't really matter much, but 90% of plots will have some kind of text in this box. It'll either have an immediate effect, or it'll have some kind of later effect in the turn. Most importantly for this game is probably the character cards. Character cards represent the nobles, the fighters, warriors, etc. in the Game of Thrones universe. In this case, I have a certain traitorous lord who becomes very internet famous around the end of Season 3, Roose Bolton. There's a number of elements on these cards that are important to note. Probably the most important elements are all along the left-hand side. The 4 in the circle represents the gold cost of the card. Just like the gold that the plot card provides, this is how much gold you have to spend in order to put this card into play. The 3 in the shield represents the strength in challenges that this card has. A 3 is about average. There are armies with 5s and 6s and 7s, and there are weaker characters with 1s and 2s, but 3s and 4s are pretty much where most of the average characters, normal people, end up in Game of Thrones. Then there are icons. There are actually 3 spaces here for icons: a red one with an axe, a green one with an eye, and then there's a spot here for a blue icon with a crown. Roose Bolton doesn't have that icon, and these represent the challenge types that each card can compete in. So military icons represent fields of battle, intrigue icons represent spies and counter-spies, and power icons represent courtly maneuvering. Each of them has a different reward. We'll get into that more when we are playing the game. There's also a text box here. The specifics of the text box don't really matter. These bold and italicized words represent the traits that the character has. So Lord cards, they play off of other cards. House Bolton, there are things in my Stark deck that count House Bolton cards. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, there's what's called a crest, and there are 4 different crests. There's Noble, Learned, Holy, and War. And then there's a special crest, the Shadow Crest, that indicates that cards in shadows don't necessarily come into play right away. They lurk in the shadows, and then they'll pop out as a surprise later on in the turn. So that's a character card, and these are basically the linchpin of the game, all in all, because without the characters, then there's no point in playing the game, right? Then you're just playing poker.
I don't know if you'll see shadows in either of our decks, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a shadows card in my deck.
Well, you won't see it in mine then.
Okay. This is a location card, and you can tell a location card by like the stony motif along the top of the card. This one is an Ocean Road, and it has a neutral shield here, which means any deck can play it without penalty. The Roose Bolton card that I showed you earlier had a Stark shield. Ooh, man, I have no depth perception. Had a Stark shield, and it indicated that a Stark player can pay 4 gold for it. Any other house card has to pay a penalty of 2 extra gold in order to play that card. So this is the Ocean Road. It has a trait Westeros, which just means that the card is located on Westeros. Limit 1 per deck, and then during the marshalling phase, you can kneel Ocean Road to lower the cost of the next character with a Noble or a War crest by 1 gold. So this is a good card if your deck is filled with Nobles and War crest cards. Let's take a guess at what my deck is filled with. Alright, these are attachment cards next. An attachment card is basically an artifact, an equipment, or an aura if you were to play Magic the Gathering. These are cards that go on other cards. They'll always state what they can be attached to, and then they have a specific effect that they'll have during play, once it's in play. So this is Frozen Solid. It's a House Stark card, and in fact it's House Stark only. So even if Clay wanted to pay 2 extra gold for my Frozen Solid, he couldn't because Greyjoys don't know how to play in the snow.
Disappointing.
This costs 1 gold, and it attaches to a non-limited location or attachment. Limited is a special terminology that they use in this game in order to define whether or not a location is, I don't know, particularly well protected, I think is the most useful terminology. A lot of things can affect locations. They often can't affect limited locations. This one has the text box. Treat attached card as though its printed text box were blank. This is a very useful card, especially against Greyjoy decks, who tend to have very powerful locations.
Sigh. I'll keep 1 alive. Just 1, hopefully.
The 5th card type, 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th card type is event cards. And you can tell an event card by the ravens along the left-hand border. This one is a response, which means you play it in response to some event happening. This one states, after you win a military challenge in which you have at least 1 participating War Crest character, choose and kill a character controlled by the losing opponent. Limit 1 per challenge. So the Starks, as a general rule in this game, are especially good at killing people. That's kind of where they're a Viking. They can pump out a whole bunch of armies and piddly little puds, and then they can use those armies and piddly little puds in order to murder Greyjoys. murder Greyjoys. Now, the 6th card type is kind of a special card type. It's not seen in every deck. They're called agendas. And so an agenda is essentially a modifier to your house. And this one states, after you announce House of Dreams as your agenda, choose from your deck a unique, in-house, non-limited location. So, specifically, let's talk about the title boxes on Roose Bolton and Ocean Road. Roose Bolton has a little flag beside his name. That indicates that he's unique. He's one of a kind. He's a snowflake. Ocean Road has no such flag, which means there are a billion ocean roads, probably one for every ocean. At least one for every ocean. They're like Main Street, really. There's one in every city. They're not special at all. But Roose Bolton is a snowflake. Now, if I wanted to play House of Dreams, I would have to find a location that has a little flag indicating that location is unique. It would have to be in-house, as defined by the house that I choose to play, in this case, House Stark. In Clay's case, House Greyjoy. Give me the thing. House Greyjoy. So his house is going to have a little flag, or a shield with the Kraken symbol on it. Let's take a look. In this case, he has an in-house Greyjoy unique location that does not have the limited keyword. So he can take this one, and we'll get into what it does later. He can take that and put it into play. The location starts the game in play and gains the text immune to opponents' non-plot card effects. It's super powerful and really disgusting broken. My Stark deck used to run this card, but I've changed it since. There's also additional text here. Draw 6 cards for your setup hand. You cannot spend more than 3 golds during setup. Ordinarily, when you start a game, there's a setup phase. You get 7 cards and 5 golds to play with in order to basically set up, as it were, your troops, your locations, basically all indicating that you're already prepared in some manner for war. Nobody starts this game completely unprepared. Now this card was designed by 2011 overall world champion Corey Faherty. Good job, Corey. You've ruined the game.
Full on broken.
So that is a breakdown of the cards that you can find in Game of Thrones. Oh, let's fix this. There we go. Now, the mechanics of the game are a little bit more complicated than just the fact that there are cards. Turns are broken down into 7 different phases. And sorry, it's not turns, it's rounds. I gotta get my terminology right. On your house card that you start the game with, it determines your house, the shield of the cards that you'll be playing. It indicates the round sequence. The first phase of the round is the plot phase. During the plot phase, each player secretly chooses one of their plot cards. In this case, I'm choosing Manderley's Scheme. Don't tell Clayton. And then, simultaneously, they'll reveal their plot card and determine who's the first player by the player whose initiative value is highest. The player whose initiative value is highest chooses who will be first player. That player will act first in each of the subsequent phases. Often, a plot card can have a when revealed effect. That is an effect that goes off immediately when the plot is revealed. I have an example right here. Valar Morghulis. This is pretty ubiquitous. It's the most common way of clearing the board of character cards. This one states, limit 1 per plot deck. When revealed, kill all characters in play. Valar Morghulis, for those of you who watch the show or have read the books, means in Old Valyrian, all men must die. Well, isn't that special?
Dun dun dun.
Thank you for that, Clay. Once players have revealed their plot card, then you go to the draw phase. The draw phase allows each player to draw 2 cards from the top of their deck and put them into their hand. Once each player has drawn their cards, you go to the marshalling phase, where the first player will act first, putting the gold that they have earned from their plot card as well as any gold that their characters or locations or attachments might provide them, into their gold pool from the treasury in the middle of the table. As you can see, we have a nice pile of gold and power tokens in the middle of the table for us to get our grimy little hands on. They'll use that gold in order to purchase new locations, characters, attachment cards, and then there are a number of event cards that can only be played during marshalling. Once both players have marshaled their new cards out of their hand, then we go into the challenges phase, where each player can initiate 3 separate challenges: a military challenge, an intrigue challenge, and a power challenge. You assign characters to challenges by turning them sideways, like this, indicating that those cards are knelt. Is that the terminology in this game? Knelt.
Yes.
Those cards become knelt.
Knelt.
A card that is knelt has been used for the turn and cannot then be used again in a subsequent challenge. Any text on the card still remains active, however, so if that character has a triggered ability that it can use or a response, then those things can still be used even when the card is knelt. Depending on the ability, some of them require that the card be standing when you use the ability. A military challenge is the red icon challenge, the one at the top of the card's text box, this one. When you declare combatants in a military challenge, I would declare an attack, kneel my Roose Bolton, and then my opponent would declare defenders. Clayton is bad at colors. Clayton needs to find a card with a red color, and Clayton would declare a defender, so his Iron Fleet captain. Once we have both assigned our participants, then you have a chance to play your event cards. Maybe I have a card that'll give my guy bonus strength, or he'll have a card that'll make my guy run to a corner and cry. It's hard to say. Cards can do anything. It's magical. We'll then compare straight up our strength characteristics. In this case, it's 3s. Like I said, 3s, very common. Most characters have 3s. In this case, my Roose Bolton is the attacker, and in Game of Thrones, ties go to the attacker. So I would, if no event cards were played and we were just going straight on one by one, my 3 would beat his 3 because I'm the aggressor. In a military challenge, the winner does nothing. The loser, however, if the loser is the defender, has to kill a number of characters equal to the attacker's claim value. So in this case, my Roose Bolton would win the challenge, and Clay would have to kill a character of his choice from his battlefield. Intrigue challenges and power challenges are very similar, except the rewards that you get for winning as the attacker are very different. In an intrigue challenge, you force your opponent to discard cards at random from their hand, reducing their choices later on in the game or even just in this particular round. A power challenge is predominantly where the games are won and lost. When you win a power challenge as the attacker, instead of having an immediate effect on the game board, you can take a power chit from the losing player's house card and then put it on your own house card. Victory in this game is defined by the moment a player has 15 power chits on his or her house card. So the ability to steal power from your opponent is usually instrumental to winning and sometimes not losing, Again, the amounts of reward that you get for winning an intrigue challenge or a power challenge are defined by the claim on your plot card, as well as some other effects that houses, mostly House Stark, have in order to increase the claim value on their plot cards. After the challenges phase, then there is a dominance phase. Dominance is determined by who has a combination of the most standing characters' combined strength and the most gold remaining in their gold pool from the marshalling phase. So if I have Roose Bolton standing and my opponent has his Iron Fleet captain standing, we tie. Nobody gets anything for dominance. However, if one of us has the edge in that, then during that phase, we get to take a power chit from the center of the table and put it onto our house card. The standing phase is pretty much what it sounds like. All of the Nelt characters on the board will stand, and then you go into taxation, where all of the gold that's in your gold pool will go back to the center of the table. There are some additional rules during multiplayer, all called melee, which will impact how these rounds or how these phases will progress. But right now, Clay and I are just going to be playing Joust, so we're not going to deal with any of the special multiplayer stuff. We're just going to be following these phases the way that they're presented, and we'll just be playing games, probably a couple games with a couple of different house decks, and we'll record them, and hopefully you guys will get a pretty good understanding of how the game works, and I'll go through it all a little later on the blog. So for right now, that's my quick rundown on Game of Thrones, the living card game. We'll be back in just a few minutes with the first game that we're going to play, House Greyjoy, House of Dreams versus Stark, No Agenda. Thanks very much.